what will you do as a county commissioner to pull us out of this recession? Why are you the best choice to get this done? Josh?
Well, first of all, our community is fortunate that we have the military's presence here because we're not suffering from the recession nearly as great as other parts of the state or the country. So number one, we need to make sure that we continue to have a collaborative working relationship with the Navy. Frankly, I don't take our jobs at our naval bases for granted. I was in a situation when we moved here to Kitsap County because my dad was laid off when they were closing bases in the early 90s. And there will be a time with the federal government looking at cutting a lot of money from its federal budget where BRAC will be back. And you need a county commissioner that knows how to defend and protect and advocate for our jobs. Not just when BRAC is here, but well before, so that we have that strong working relationship. You know, what we've really tried to do with the county is to live within our means and be good stewards of your taxpayers' dollars. So I believe, in terms of the infrastructure that we've put in places like Silverdale where it's unincorporated, helping to, I'm sorry, I'm long-winded on that one.
Well, my dad was actually one of the people laid off at that time, and so I know exactly how it feels. He started his own business building houses at that time, but that is something that concerns me greatly, is that while we are very fortunate to have these bases to take care of us and continue to make sales and retail go very well here, if we lose that, what will happen overall? I mean, we're seeing a downturn in the sales tax, which is seriously affecting our budget. I think there's a couple things that we can do. I think we can start being a lot more friendly to business. And I think there's a few very simple steps that we have to take first of all, before we start deciding who we're going to get to come here. We need to make sure that that county administration building is open during regular business hours. Because the second that you come in as a business and you see that you can't even process permits, during regular business hours, you can't handle transactions, your business plan, you're worried you're going to have time and cost overruns. And then I think we need to diversify, the opportunities for them to come here. And I think we're not doing that right now. Like I said before, we're not telling them, we're asking. Sorry.
Thank you. And moving back to property, private property, the question is from one of our participants is, would you defend the statement that a politician made that, quote, it is asinine that property owners are the best keepers of their property, end quote?
I do believe that private property owners are the best keepers of their property. The house I built was on a salmon stream, and I think that while the regulations were understandable to a point, at some point they become burdensome, and it's unfair to private property owners. When we're looking at the shoreline master plan, we've got clauses in there that make it so that if the house burns down, it's going to be nearly impossible to rebuild that structure because it's a non-conforming lot. I think it's unacceptable. I think that where we really need to watch is when we're having significant development in the county, we need to make sure that the stormwater runoff isn't ruining other properties, that it's not affecting other properties, like we're talking about here with the mining project. And we need to pay very close attention to those projects. But when you're dealing with single-family residences, I think we really need to understand that the people on that property want that property to be good for the environment. They live there. So I think that that's a great, I'm trying to think the exact statement, but I think we need to protect some private property rights.
Thank you. Josh?
Well, I don't think the issue is with somebody who's already living with her in their home. I think the issue is for folks that are working on development. Is development being done the right way? And just up the hill here, if you go to Illahee and you talk to the neighbors that live in Illahee, when there's a heavy storm event and Illahee Creek is flooded, you can go look out the windows and look at Illahee Bay, and you'll see just a complete swarm of mud that is just drained out into the bay. And that's because of an inordinate amount of erosion and stormwater that comes from all the development that wasn't done appropriately. So I think the county's role through our regulatory policies and the Department of Community Development is to provide that oversight so that neighbors have the confidence that when projects are developed that they're done the right way. And the idea that we should just rely on the stamp of an engineer working for a developer isn't good enough. We need oversight.
Okay, so next question is, what do you believe is going to be the toughest budget decision you will have to make in this coming balancing of the budget?
Well, we've made, as I said, the majority of our decisions to date. The budget that we're looking at right now is a balanced budget, which at this point would put $1.3 million into reserves, something that we very much need. I think over the next couple weeks, the county commissioners may look at possibly taking a couple $100,000 and backfilling some really critical functions within our juvenile detention hall. Juvenile detention has seen a lot of cuts from the state, and there's some very important programs that our youth need that if the county doesn't backfill resources pulled back from the state, I think our youth are going to be vulnerable. So that's what we're going to be dealing with over the next couple weeks. But I'm proud to report that this is really the earliest that the county's gotten to this point of balancing our budget and making these critical decisions. And it's because we've really worked through this process in a methodical way. So that's where we're at today.
Thank you.
I think the most difficult area of the budget that we're going to have to deal with is working with Sheriff Boyer to see what we can find in our law and justice budget and having it not be the deputies that serve our county, because we need every one of them that we have. And I think we really need to start working within that budget to see what we can make more efficient and what we can do to basically work together and make these things happen a little better, because that's 70% of our budget. But I think that to start with the deputies is the wrong decision, and I think that the public needs to have some input a little more on what we think is important to maintain in that budget, and what they, frankly, if we're bloated there, we need to be talking about that. And I think in talking with members of the Citizens Budget Committee, they've stated that there are areas in there that we can look at, and I think we need to start doing that. But I do think that they're a core priority of government, and so I think that they need to be given the highest priority when we're looking at a budget.
Thank you. Well, it's been a fast morning, if you can believe it, but we're actually down to the point where our candidates are allowed their 2-minute summary, so I can get everybody out of here as promised by 8:30. So with that...
Well, looking at that fog outside, it's gotten worse, unbelievable.
Yes, it is. It's moving in on us, so hopefully we'll find our way back to where we belong after here.
Just like campaigns.
Yeah, right. So, with that, just a reminder that this Friday, the Bremerton Area Chamber of Commerce is having its installation brouhaha, right?
Yep. At 6 o'clock at McCormick Woods is the social hour. 7 o'clock the program starts.
And cost is?
$50 per person. We still have some sponsored tables at $500. That includes Chianti.
So it's a major event for the Bremerton
and there's
Chamber
still
of
some
Commerce.
tickets available.
Tickets available, and talk to Frank or the chamber if you're so interested in joining.
It's going to be a fun time.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, I'll leave that for parting thoughts. Moving on, we started with Josh in the beginning, so let us end with Abby can begin with the summary statement, please, for 2 minutes.
Well, I think something that we're seeing this election season is that people that are regular people are frustrated with the process. We're looking at these budgets, and we're hearing that everything's fine, and yet we don't see that it's fine when we pick up the newspaper every day. And I think what we really need to start looking at is how we can address, as government officials, how we can address those concerns for people, how we can alleviate that concern when they see new projects being built and they get an excuse that they're free, but yet they see that their taxes are still rising. They see that they're still not getting the level of service from sheriff's deputies or other core services, like when they expect to go to Wildcat Lake after work. And they want to know why there aren't these reasonable trade-offs. And I think that we really need to start addressing those concerns instead of acting as though they're irrelevant. And right now we're acting as though they're irrelevant. And in the last 2 weeks of this election, I've seen some of these turn around, some of these things turn around. And I hope that that really is a turnaround. But what's been frustrating to me this entire election is that it seems like every concern that I have is an attack on an employee. Every concern that I have is an attack on someone, when really what I'm seeing is a lot of indecision at the county level. It's not that an employee at the Department of Community Development is an idiot. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that these people sometimes haven't been given adequate guidelines and adequate training, cross-training, to be able to do their jobs. That's not their fault. the case of indecision that we're seeing when we look at the gun club, when we look at the Chico Creek Water Basin. These are things that could have been handled early on that weren't, because they're left floating out there, because they're not politically correct to answer. Same thing with the homeless issue that we're going to see popping up. These are things that politicians don't want to deal with, because it makes it so that they may not win. And I guess what I want you to know is that if I go in and I win, I don't care if I win 4 years from now, but I'll be willing to take a stance on some of these issues, and I know that you can count on me for that.
Thank you. Josh?
Well, I'm afraid of some of the stances you would take on these issues, because it's pretty clear that when it comes to managing the county's budget, when it comes to a lot of the critical decisions that are important to our community, I have offered over the last 4 years a balanced, moderate approach. You know, when I was here 4 years ago during the primary election, I know there were a lot of folks who thought that maybe I was too young or inexperienced, maybe thought that that I didn't have the approach needed for a community. I believe I've proven the majority of residents of this county to be a very effective, professional county commissioner. That's all I have been focusing on for the last 4 years. And I'm proud of what I've been able to get done. And when I ran 4 years ago, the promise I made is that the most important thing to me was my integrity. And when I ran against Patty Lamb, I never attacked her on tough decisions that she made. I never attacked her or used misinformation. I was pretty upfront and honest. And as the Kitsap Sun came out and said in the editorial over the weekend, you know, the politics of misinformation are out there. And much of what my opponent has had to say this election has been unfounded. I'm open to good ideas about making it easier for businesses to expand in Kitsap County. I'm open to ideas on how the county can become leaner and meaner. I go to work every day trying to deal with these issues. But what I haven't heard over this past several months during this campaign are any specifics. What I promise to you is that I'm going to continue to be an effective, balanced county commissioner. I know the priority, and my number one responsibility is managing the county in a fiscally responsible way. I'll continue to do that. At the same time, I'm going to work with our community to get things done that move our community forward. That's all I can promise to you, and that's what I look forward to serving and completing over the next 4 years if I'm re-elected as county commissioner. Thank you again, Joe, and the chamber for putting this event together.
Thank you. All right, everyone, now it's time.